Welcome to day 6 of the 30-day Dental MBA. Today we're going to talk about the miracles of group practice. And let me tell you something, pay attention to group practice. This is the strongest tailwind in dentistry. When we look at physicians, physicians are now up to 50% of physicians in the urban America, where 55% of Americans live, over 50% of physicians are in group practice. You think about it, if you got a child. If you have a child, you've gone through a gynecologist and a pediatrician. Well, name me a gynecologist who's solo practitioner and needs to be on standby to deliver a baby 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 168 hours in a week. You can't work 168 hours a week. And look at pediatricians. I mean, pediatricians, when you wake up and your kid's freaking out, especially with the firstborn child, you know, it takes about 3 or 4 kids before you get it down, but the first child, they start doing something weird, they're not breathing right, and you panic, and you call up your pediatrician, you say, I need to be seen today. Why can they get you in? Because they've moved towards group practice. So let's talk about group practice. It is one of the most important aspects of dentistry today, and you need to master this stuff. Group practice is absolutely important. It's in probably the strongest tailwind gust of the dental industry, and solo practitioners are in a massive headwind. And let's take it back to McDonald's. When you go into McDonald's, do you walk in there on a Saturday and they say, excuse me, Jim, you're in here ordering a Big Mac, but see, you're with a cook called Tom, and Tom only works Monday through Thursday. You need to come back and make it a point on Monday to get a Big Mac. When you go to McDonald's, you're not going to Chef Ricky, who's 16 years old and plays soccer in the junior year of high school. You're going to McDonald's. That's the brand name you're there for. That's why I call my office Today's Dental. It's not about me. It's about the customer. The customer's not going to see Howard Farran. They're going to see Today's Dental. It's about systems, and I don't care if you're with me or Tim or Taylor or any of the associates or Russ or whoever it may be. It's about the systems of Today's Dental. It's not about me, it's about the customer. If you're thinking your dental office is about you and you're selling your name, then you're thinking scarcity, you're thinking limited pie, you got your eye on the mirror, you're provider focused, you're not customer focused. The first massive healthcare person that got their eye off themselves and got their eye on the customer was Stanley Pearl, a Texan. Pearl Vision, remember that? He was the first man who had the keen insight, put the glasses, the glass milling machine, and the doctor giving the eye exam under one roof, and the rest was history as he went on his way to be a billionaire. The next one in healthcare, in my opinion, was Mr. Walgreens, who realized that the day of every pharmacist owning their own pharmacy, charging outrageous prices for prescriptions, being open Monday through Friday 8 to 5 was gone. He went to 24-hour days, 7-day-a-week McDonald's or Walgreens. In fact, you know the Walgreens by my house has a drive-through? I mean, come on, look where that's gone since 1960. You know, back to the McDonald's checklist, as we were talking about consumer dentistry on day 5, you need to fortify this, and you're only going to do this in group practice, is to really focus on tape 5 and then implement it with day 6. McDonald's has a signature building. You're driving down the road 40 miles an hour and you see 300 yards away, you say, oh, there's McDonald's. What's your answer to that? You're in a medical dental building with a wooden sign next to a wooden tree. Now, a wooden sign next to a wooden tree, in wartime, we call that a camouflage. Doctors, dentists, lawyers, and accountants think that's advertising. McDonald's has a lidded sign. You have a wooden sign next to a wooden tree. McDonald's has a name and a logo. You have your own silly name because it impresses you and no one else. McDonald's has advertisements with economic incentives. You think coupons are tacky. Mom makes 89% of all appointments. And what is the #1 day Mom reads a newspaper? Which day of the week does Mom read the newspapers at almost 5 times the rate of any other day? You know what day it is? Sunday. Coupon day. Have you seen the Sunday paper? You open up, the thing weighs 5 pounds, and 2 pounds of it is gosh darn coupons in the middle. She takes the entire $12 trillion New York Stock Exchange and throws it in the fireplace. Then she spreads these coupons out all over the floor and says, oh, look at this coupon. I can go to the Eye Masters or Lee Optical, and if I buy 1 pair of glasses, I get the frames free with the second pair, or oh, look at this dentist. You go in there and bleaching's regularly $500 and bring this in and you get it for $100 off. McDonald's has television advertising. You have still yet to get organized dentistry to do one national advertising campaign, but once again, it's too late for them. It's too little because free enterprise companies like Bob Ibsen's Rembrandt and Dorfman's Night White, these guys are doing more advertising than any trade service organization is ever going to be able to do in dentistry. Now, dairy farmers spend $211 million a year advertising, and ADA, total dues collected, is $89 million. So how do dairy farmers selling milk? Now, what is it people don't understand about milk? I mean, come on, what is the definition of a mammal? You give birth to live young and you nurse some milk, okay? What is it about milk you don't understand? Most of you were given milk 30 seconds after you're born, and dairy farmers, now what's the difference between a dairy farmer and a dentist? Dentists have 8 years of college. Dairy farmers have about 8 teeth, okay? And they spend $211 million a year advertising milk, and you sit there and you have yet to have your first national advertising campaign in dentistry. McDonald's has a realistic market attitude. They're giving these people what they want. You only want rich patients, and you only want them to do what you think's the best. Gold inlays and wear bite splints and weird things like that. McDonald's has trained management. You don't. How many practice management seminars I've been to, and the dentist will stay there in his fearfully falling forward instead of flippantly flying freely attitude, where he'll say, "Well, I don't believe in the office manager concept." That's the same geek who hires a bunch of yes man, yes sir, yes doctor, introvert geek staff who are afraid of their own shadow. I hire staff that will regularly chew me out. Hey, Dr. Farran, come here. I want to talk to you. You're always saying to your staff, "Oh, you come to my office, I want to talk to you." My staff chews me out. Why? Because I tolerate extroverts, I tolerate diversity, and I tolerate high self-esteem people. And when they're chewing me out, it's because they're passionate. I love passion. Tony Robbins mentions the word passion 1,000 times in his 3-day seminar. McDonald's has a consistent product. You need to be either all tooth-colored or all amalgams and PFMs. Either your amalgams and PFMs or your composites, Proceras, Empress, Empress 2, Targus Vectoris, Cerac 2. Pick a market segment and stay there. McDonald's is systems dependent. You're doctor dependent. What happens if I take a dental office or a doctor office that's doing $40,000 a month and sell it to a dentist in another city that was doing $20,000 a month? You put him in that office, and within a year, he'll screw it down to $20,000. In fact, I tell dentists, 90% of dentists, the only way they'll have $1 million a year dental office is if they buy a $2 million one and screw it down to $1 million. McDonald's has a consumer-oriented, convenient hours, and you have doctor convenient hours. I ask more doctors and dentists, why don't you stay open till 7 o'clock, 2-3 nights a week? And they usually say things like, "Well, my wife cooks dinner at 5. And I say, "Well, hell, get a new wife. Find a wife that cooks dinner at 7. Quit focusing on you and your wife and your golf game, and you start focusing on what these customers want." You know, the fact is, McDonald's will open up a brand new store, and its first month, it will produce and collect 80% of its best month ever yet to come. From the first day out of their starting gate, McDonald's has well-trained management staff, concept, vision, action. They're ready to go. Myth is that you think that when you start a dental office that it will take an average of 7 years to get a fee-for-service family practice dental office up and rolling. And my gosh, Rick Kirshner now, I don't even know what number dental office he's on. It must be 20 or 25 or whatever. Rick Kirshner will open up his Comfort Dental's first month do 60, 80, 100 grand right out of the gate the first month. You don't need 7 months to figure out what you could do the first day. Regina Hertzlinger, PhD economist from Harvard University, who I just love her works in her book, Market Driven Healthcare, says that a focused factory dental healthcare facility needs to be consistent, needs to be reliable, have clear standards, low cost, convenience, patient comfort, quality, customer acceptance, and it's got to make itself available. It's got to be available and accessible. And when we go into the waiting room, here's where group practice starts right out of the gate. When you go into a waiting room, when you look at my waiting room, there's a lot more science than meets the eye of that waiting room. Why do I have all the chairs facing each other? Why are they all facing a commercial playing coupons or commercials selling sealants and implants and you name it? Why are all my plaques and diplomas out there? Why do I have market differentiation before and after pictures on 8x10s all over the wall? And every time I get an award, like my dental school, University of Missouri, Kansas City, gave me Alumni of the Year. The Arizona State Dental Association gave me the Arizona Award for my efforts in helping to get fluoridated water in Phoenix. The Office of Dental Health gave me the Public Health Dentist of the Year Award for fluoridating Chandler. Whenever I make the newspapers or get these plaques and diplomas, things like that, I put it in my waiting room because I got to sell me because no one else is going to sell me. And there's a lot of science behind a waiting room because waiting is a severely consumer negative attribute. So what is the science of waiting? We call that the 8 principles of waiting. And I know you were expecting that on tape 5, but I build up and I always bleed a little over to the next tape so that you'll be having to go on to the next day. So if ever you watch a tape and say, gosh, he said he was going to say this and he didn't, well, I'm trying to force you to listen to all 30 days of this Dental MBA. But the 8 principles of waiting are simply unoccupied time feels longer than occupied time. Which feels longer? Remember feeling, not which one is longer, quantitative. Which one feels longer, qualitative, emotional. When I'm in the waiting room, I'm just like, gosh, how much longer is it going to be? Because I'm not being occupied. But when I'm in the dental operatory, it's less. Time feels shorter because I'm actually doing what I came here to do to get my teeth fixed. For instance, have you ever rode on an airplane? I don't care. The longest airplane ride I ever flew was from LAX airport. Flew from LA to Sydney, Australia, 14 hours and 10 minutes in a 747. I don't care if it's a 14-hour flight or a 1-hour flight from Phoenix to LA. You get on a 1-hour flight, all the monkeys without a tail, all the apes, they sit in their chair because they're occupied. They're doing what they're supposed to do. We're flying from Phoenix to LA. And they all sit there in their chair, and the flight attendant walks around. She throws everybody bags of peanuts because they're all apes, and, I guess bananas are too messy. And so she's flying, they get out these little bags, and I don't even know why they give you these peanuts. It's like 8 of them in a bag. You open it up, and first thing you do is you count them. Okay, 2, 4, 6, 8, and if you get like 7, you raise your hand. I was shorted a peanut. And all the little monkeys are sitting there eating their little peanuts and drinking their little liquids. But have you noticed the minute the plane lands, everybody stands up and dives in the aisle, and they're like, hey, come on, open the door, get out. Well, it's because since the plane's landed, we're already there. Now we're wasting time. The 14 hours flying to Australia, everyone sat in their chair. The minute it lands, everybody dives into the aisle, and it's like, people, sit down. We're all going to be panicking to get out of here, and we're all going to be waiting at baggage claim. But see, apes don't like to wait if they're not occupied. Pre-processed waits feel longer than in-process waits. Same thing. If these people have to wait 10 minutes, get them back there in the dental operator. If they got an 8 o'clock appointment, see them at 8 o'clock. And the reason you're running behind is because you're running late on the last patient, and once again, you don't have an extra chair. If I'm running 10 minutes behind, we still see them on time, and I'll just go numb it up, and I'll say, Jim, I'd like to let this soak in for at least 10 or 15 minutes so that you don't feel a thing. And he's, oh, yeah, that's fine. Then the 15-minute wait, he thinks, well, I'm waiting to get good and numb. Not I'm waiting because he doesn't have his act together and he's running late on a root canal. Anxiety also makes wait seem longer. Now, we just had a big episode in dentistry. I forgot what it was on. It was 20 or 60 minutes. But basically, it was the case about people dying in dentistry. And it was basically in dentistry, if you die in the dentist, you pretty much have one thing in common. You had an IV in your arm. And of course, dentistry's knee-jerk reaction was, they're in denial and it was okay, and everybody gets mad at 20/20 and 60 minutes and 48 hours and Reader's Digest. Anytime someone attacks dentistry, they always take it personal and attack back. Why don't you just sit back and think about it for a minute? Okay, they did this episode on people dying in the dental office, most of which were kids. Now, I don't care if you like journalism or not, there's dead kids laying on the floor. You may like or not like 60 minutes, 20/20, 48 hours, Reader's Digest, whoever, but you got dead kids on the floor. Are you denying that there weren't really dead kids on the floor? What do all dead people in dentistry almost all have in common? They all got an IV in their arm. And you know what? If I go to urban American hospitals with 100 beds or more, it is not standard of care to do the IV and the surgery. There's not a cardiologist in Phoenix who has permission to run the IV, pulse oximeter, EKG, and to do a bypass. Because when you're doing a bypass, you're looking at the heart, you're looking at the leg veins, you're concentrating on the heart, you miss these EKGs, it's not your core competency, and standard of care in hospitals in urban America over 100 beds universally are anesthesiologists do the anesthesia, you do the brain surgery, the heart surgery, the root canal, whatever, and I don't know why anybody would not want to offer IV sedation. The dentists who don't want to offer it say, well, I don't know how to do it. Well, duh. I don't know how to fly an airplane, but I can go to some place and find a pilot. I can call an anesthesiology service, and I can have an anesthesiologist beeped and in my office in 10 minutes. You don't believe me? Look last time your wife had a baby. We've had 4 kids. First 2 kids, my wife was all brainwashed. She wanted to have everything naturally, and she went and had it natural, whatever. About the 3rd kid, it's the middle of the night. Another kid was sick. She's up half the night. She's exhausted. My woman grew up on a farm, dairy farm. She had 5 brothers. She kicked my ass any day of the week. And I never seen my sweetie lose it. And she's like, man, I can't go through this again. And I said, honey bunny, get an epidural. She's like, oh, no, I want to have it natural. And I said, look, I'm going to tell the doctor you can get an epidural, and I want you to get an epidural. And so I talked her into it, and I went in there, and, there's the male gynecologist. I said, she's going to need an epidural. You know what he says to me? He goes, I don't think she needs one. She didn't have one the first 2. I just really don't think she needs one. I said to him, are you about to deliver a 3rd 9-pound baby ape out of your rear end? You get on the phone, and you get an anesthesiologist here, and if she delivers that with an epidural, I'm going to get a lawyer, and I'm going to sue you for everything under the gun. And he panicked, and he went and called someone. Guy walks in 10 minutes later, and it must have been 3 or 4 in the morning. I said to the guy that walked in, I said, how the hell did you get here in 10 minutes? He goes, man, anesthesiologists, we're part of a service. There's like 300 of us. There's like 3 or 4 different companies in Arizona that have anywhere from 50 to a couple hundred anesthesiologists. They beep us. I was on a call. I was at the Waffle House down the street. Boom. I said, give me your card. I want to get these services. They do the billing. They use medical insurance. This is their core competency. They come in with their own drugs, their own pulse oximeters, their own EKGs. They wheel it into your dental office on a wheel, on a dolly. Get into IV sedation, but don't do it yourself. And if you do it yourself, let me tell you something. You're playing high risk. I mean, you can go parachuting, you can live 99% of the time, but if your chute doesn't open, you die. And that's the way it is with IV sedation. I know you can do it, and I know you've been doing it, but I don't recommend it. We see a lot of dental schools now, well, not a lot, but a couple, University of Oregon Health Science, University of Pittsburgh, where after dental school, not only can you go a couple, 2 or 3 years and become a periodontist or a pedodontist, or 5 years being oral surgeon, MD, or what have you. But they're also offering, after dental school, a 2-year board-certified anesthesiology rotation where you can go into a hospital and do anesthesiology for anything from a brain surgery to a bypass or into a dental office for a root canal. So anxiety makes waits seem a lot longer. Uncertain waits are longer than known waits, known finite waits. And this is why hiring introvert geek staff is such a disaster from the word go, because you have to train an introvert to talk to people. An extrovert can't help not doing it. If I come into your dental office and I have an 8 o'clock appointment and it's 10 after and no one said anything to me and I'm still waiting, at this point I don't know if I'm ever going to be seated. I don't know if I'm here. I don't know what's going on, and I'm going ballistic. But if someone walked in the door at 5 minutes to late and I knew they were going to be seated at 8:10 and I'm an extrovert, I can't help but stand up and say, hi Jim, how you doing? Man, don't you love this weather? God, it's so fun living in Phoenix in the winter. Hey, you got an 8 o'clock appointment, and our 7 o'clock person, they had a really bad abscess, and we're going to seat you. We're running a little late. We're going to seat you exactly at 8:10. Instantly, oh man, that's fine, no problem. We got a phone in the waiting room, got a drinking fountain, got magazines, got USA Today. I don't like magazines. You only can subscribe to magazines that are not time-based stories, because in the era of CNN and radio and 24-hour news, you can't give people news magazines. You got to give them magazines that are not time-dated, like People, get the USA Today Daily. They got a money section, a life section, a sports section, a news section. It's colorful. It's there every day. In fact, one thing we did, we just got a USA Today newspaper machine right in front of our office. So heck, we don't even have to buy the thing. Unexplained waits are longer than explained waits. This is not a problem with extrovert staff. Unfair waits. Number 6, unfair waits are longer than equitable waits. What is an unfair wait? I had an 8 o'clock appointment. I got here at 10 till 8. Now it's 15 after 8. You still haven't seated me. And this chick just walks in at 8:15. She barely sits down and you seat her. The hell's that? I've been waiting here for 15, 20 minutes. With an extrovert receptionist, she'll stand up and say, oh, by the way, Jim, you had an 8 o'clock appointment and it's 8:15 and we're going to seat you exactly 8:20, and say you had an appointment with the doctor. And Dr. Numbnuts, he's never on time now. Susan here, she's smarter than you. She had an appointment with the hygienist. It's the hygienist, she always runs on time. In fact, if she ever runs late, it's because, once again, Numbnuts has screwed up her schedule, okay? So that's why her wait was short. She's with the hygienist, your wait's long, you're with Numbnuts. If you explain this stuff, they understand it. The more valuable the service, the longer they'll wait, okay? That's easy to figure out, supply and demand. And luckily you're selling root canals and crowns. But the last one, number 8, is why the waiting room chairs face together. And this was figured out by Walt Disney. Solo waiting feels longer than group waiting. When you're in prison and you screw up in prison, what's the meanest thing they do to you in prison short of killing you? Solitary confinement. Average person only lasts 100 hours and they start losing it. You are a social animal. I don't care if they dug you up, Peking man, Java man, Neanderthal, wherever they find apes from any time period, they find you in caves with 5, 10, 15, 20. There's 187 species of monkeys. Same thing. They're always found in groups of about 25. The same thing with the other 4 apes besides humans, gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, gibbons. They're always in groups. You're a social animal. When you come home, why does your dog jump all over you and lick you and want to play, and your cat looks at you and like flips you off and slips out the back door? Because the only reason the cat is still alive today is by being a solo, quiet hunter. Being around noisy people is not congruent with their success strategy. Where a dog is only here today hunting in packs, like hyenas and wild dogs. So your dog is a social animal. Your cat would just assume you would die and leave a lifetime supply of food, okay? So what Walt Disney said is, he said, if I put these people in a closet with no light on, have them wait an hour for the ride, by the time you open up the door, they're picking their hair out and they're picking themselves and eating their skin. I mean, they'll just deteriorate. They're like solo confinement, okay? And he says, but what you do is you wrap the line on itself, and when you wrap the line on yourself, everyone they're in line, they're looking at other people. And when apes are looking at other people, time flies fast. Because when you're in line, you're not saying, God, we're in line for an hour. You're sitting there thinking, God, look at that fat lady's butt. That is the biggest butt I've ever seen. God, look at that guy. I can't believe he wears that outfit. Look at that kid. He's ugly. Look at those zits. Look at those shoes. Look at that outfit. Mom, is that lady wearing a bra? I mean, when you're staring at people, time's whizzing by 100 miles an hour. So Disney wraps these lines around each other. That's why the science of a waiting room says wrap all the chairs facing each other, because they're sitting in a chair and they're looking over the corner of the newspaper and they're looking at the other apes. Apes love to watch apes. In fact, Mr. Hyatt of Hyatt Regency, he had an interesting little dilemma with waiting. He noticed that, the business traveler is a long-term relationship client. That's where you make the most money. They don't make money on the hit and miss, never know when they're coming or not going, consumer weekend traveler. They want the businessman. That's why all the airline cards have their frequent flyer clubs, frequent flyer clubs. An airline company, you'd rather have someone like me who's going to fly with them every week, once a week for the last 10 years, than trying to predict when you take your once-a-year trip to Disneyland, okay? They can't plan around your chaotic trips. Someone died, someone's getting married. That's hard to plan. But they can really plan capacity off the regular business traveler. And he really kept his eye on customers, and he kept asking them with convenience cards, what would you like the most? What do you not like the least? What would you change tomorrow? What would you never change? And his complaint kept coming back that it had to wait so long for an elevator. So he would give it to his engineers and his industrial process people, and they kept coming back and they kept saying, Mr. Hyatt, these guys are only waiting 48 seconds on average for an elevator. And he'd look at the data and he'd look at the complaints, and he'd look at the data and he'd look at the complaints, and says, well, the scientists say, the engineers, the designers say they're waiting 40-some seconds, and these people are saying they're waiting forever. What's the difference between 48 seconds and forever? So he thought, this has something to do with feelings. Forget the engineers, the dentists, the architect-type quantitative mathematicians. He brought in an industrial psychologist. Industrial psychologist spent one day in the jail and says, look, when a monkey without a tail pushes a button for an elevator, and you have this lit sign up there, they look at it like a pointer dog. 12, 11, 10. Hey, it stopped on 10. What the hell are they doing on 10? Hey! Hurry up, and they're pushing the button. 10, 9, 8. They steer out the whole thing, and it seems like forever. He said, take that gosh darn thing off of there and put mirrors by all the buttons. That way they'll push the mirror, and the first thing the ape likes to look at is another ape. That's why in advertising, every ad uses the number one thing a human is attracted to is another set of ape eyes. Number 2 is movement. Number 3 is contrast change. Number 4 is peripheral movement. And they sit there and they like to look at other eyes. They notice themselves in a mirror. They push a button for an elevator. They notice the mirror and they think, oh, let me tuck in my shirt and let me get my hair just right. And let me pick my teeth. And they're so caught up in themselves that they almost, it's like ding, and they almost miss the elevator. So what you got to do is you got to realize that waiting is a huge negative. Most of this whole thing I'm talking about is from the Psychology of Waiting Lines from Harvard Business School. It's kind of funny. The case was done, I believe, in 1984. Here it is, the year 2000. No one's added a word to this case. That's how timeless this study is. Regina Hertzlinger says something interesting. She says in 1991, there were 704 million patient visits to the physician. If each patient had to wait 30 minutes for his or her scheduled appointment, then our economy would have lost 176,000 years of work and productivity. Back to customer service and why we need to go to group practice is back to the golden rule. And you know, studying religion, I've always found religion extremely fascinating because I think it's the #1 driver of customs, cultures, and beliefs. And reading every Bible and every major religion, I was only able to find one thing in common in every religion, and that was the golden rule. Judaism said it best, 2000 BC. It says, what is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow man. That is the entire law. All the rest is commentary. That was the Talmud. Can you think of anything more concise than that? Hinduism, 1500 BC. This is the sum of all true righteousness. Deal with others as thou wouldest thyself be dealt with, the Mahabharata. Buddhism, 500 BC. Hurt not others in ways that you yourself would not find hurtful. Confucius, 500 BC. Surely it is the maximum of loving kindness. Do not unto others as thou would not have done unto you. And then everybody in America thinks Jesus said it first. Heck, that was zero. That was 3 BC to 27 AD. He says, do unto others thou would have done unto you. And then Islam's the last to come out with it, 600 AD, when he says, no one of you is a believer until he desires for his brother that which he desires for himself. Okay? That's the golden rule of customer service. How would you want to be treated in your dental office? Would you want to have a bypass and have the cardiovascular surgeon come by your hospital at night when you're coming out of your stupor and say, hey, Jim, are you doing okay? You feel good? You got any questions? You want to be treated like, treat other people like you want to be treated. The golden rule could also be called the law of reciprocity, because if you need it, then give it. If you want your patients to communicate with you, then communicate with your patients. If you want your staff to come tell you when there's a problem, then you got to sit there and ask your staff when there's a problem. If you want it, give it back. If you want your staff to make more profit, then give them profit. Don't give them profit, you won't get more profit. In fact, the #1 thing in any social network like humans, as opposed to cats, is that in an interdependent social network, the only way you'll get what you want is to give it to other people. If you want to have less violence, quit spanking your kids and hitting people and flipping people off on the highway. Same thing, think about this, not only from just the golden rule and the religious side of the aspect, think of it also in practicality. I think collection agencies are one of the dumbest things in dentistry. Why? If you send $100 to a collection agency, #1, I don't care what you say, you average about $5 of money. So every $100 you turn over to collection agency, you get about $5, maybe $8. But what did you do? Who did you turn over to collection? Oh, someone in your backyard. You say you're going to have a dental practice there from age 25 to 65. That's 40 years, and you're turning people over to collections within 5-mile radius of your office? And then what is Dad going to say? Is he going to go home and say to his kids, well, you know, we were turned into a collection agency because I'm really a deadbeat? Oh, no. Humans, the most unique trait about being a human being is that you can rationalize anything if it fits your own self-interest agenda. So what does he say? Well, I'll tell you why I didn't pay my bills, because I think that root canal sucks, and I don't think the crown match, and yada, yada, yada. And the more you jerk his chain, the more likely he's going to take you to the State Board of Dental Examiners or get a lawyer or whatever, or come up with some irrational deal. And you know what I always do? In the United States, 88% of America are Christians, 3% Jewish, 3% Islamic. What I always do is, if you're not going to collect the money, something happened, they thought you had insurance, something fell through, whatever, and you got bad debt, and these people haven't made a payment on it for 150 days. What I do is at Christmas time, I zero out all their over 90 accounts that I know are over 150-day accounts I know are useless. I zeroed out all the balance. I get a bunch of Christmas cards. I take their Christmas card, and I basically say to the patient, I said, Dear Mrs. Jones, It's been another great year for Today's Dental. I mean, we kicked butt, and the only reason we did so good is because people like you refer us to friends or loved one. Obviously, looking at our collections, you didn't have a good year. We did some great dentistry on you, and you haven't paid us a dime for half a year, so obviously you must be having some serious problems. So with the spirit of Christmas around the corner, we've excused your debt. The only thing we ask that you remain a loyal, friendly patient of Today's Dental, and that you refer more of your friends and loved ones. Oh my God, I have little old ladies coming in with crocheted blankets, blowing their nose, crying. I'll never forget this one lady owed me $2,000. She comes in crying, bawling after she got this deal. She made me a pumpkin pie. About 30 minutes later, I walked back to the break room, see my dental assistant, Jan, of 12 years, starting to cut in that pumpkin pie. I said, don't even think about cutting into a $1,200 pumpkin pie. I said, my God, that pie cost me $2,000. You think you're going to sit there and eat it? I didn't even know what to do with a $2,000 pumpkin pie. It just sat there until it rotted. Another thing we do is, operation logistics. Every patient that leaves, we do an exit interview on. Were you satisfied with the treatment you received from the service staff? Did the service staff listen and understand your needs? Were you satisfied with the service staff's ability to have your teeth serviced promptly? If you received a survey from Today's Dental, will you be more likely to answer in a positive fashion? I stole this like everything. I've never had an original idea in my life. I stole this from Chrysler. And how did I get this from Chrysler? It wasn't from having dinner with Lee Iacocca or anything. It was taking my Chrysler LeBaron in to get service. Every time I've taken my Chrysler LeBaron in to get service, my gosh, they call me 3 days later and say, Dr. Farran, we changed your oil, we did this, we did a tune-up, just making sure everything's okay. We're satisfied, everything went right, and I'm just like, gosh. And you have a hard time doing this to patients. You did root canals, pulled wisdom teeth, did implants on. The key measures of consumerism is time on the phone necessary to make an appointment, the number of days you had to wait for a routine cleaning with the hygienist, a scheduled appointment for the dentist, or an emergency dentist with the emergency appointment with the dentist, and number 3, on-time performance of seating each dental patient. Now remember, the airlines, every single airline, the FAA, the government. Now you know how useless the government is. They usually on average take twice as much money to do any product or service with half the value. And what do? They track every airline's on-time takeoff, on-time landing, and they'll say, oh yeah, Southwest Airlines was number 1. They just got their, I think, what was it, their 5th triple in a row, where they got number 1 in on-time delivery, least number of baggage loss, on-time takeoff, something like that. The top 2 reasons cited for not getting a 6-month cleaning when you have indemnity dental insurance that pays 100% for a cleaning, exam, and x-rays are difficulty in leaving work, difficulty getting appointment. Remember we talked about 1960 where 40% of America worked for a Fortune 500 company, now it's 13%. Well, when you work for a Fortune 500 company and there's 500 people on the assembly line and you said to your foreman and you have a union, now I need to leave to go get a cleaning, usually you left and they just replaced you with like a rubber plant or something until you got back, okay? Well, small business, that ain't how it works. There's 1 million small businesses. The average small business does less than $1 million in sales, has less than 25 appointments, and it's such a small company that when one person leaves, usually the table starts to have a rock. They're not going as smoothly as possible. So this is where group practice comes in. You got to be available. It's got to be one that can be used and usable, can be reached and is very handy, accessible, is easy to approach or enter, easily understood, obtainable, and generally acceptable. The average number of days to wait for a new patient to get an appointment, according to the ADA 1996 survey, for a general dentist was 8 days, a specialist was 7 days. The average number of days to wait for an existing patient record to get in for an appointment was 8 days for a general dentist, 7 days for a specialist. This is not seen in any other industry in the United States. You can get a car right now, you can go to a restaurant tonight, you can go to a movie tonight, and I say this till I'm blue in the face, this country you can get a hooker and a pizza delivered in 30 minutes. Why do I have to wait 8 days to get a gosh darn cleaning? This is totally unacceptable and is the #1 driver of why people are looking for new providers in healthcare. Simply availability. And then when we look at availability, look at the originator convenient hours. The name 7-Eleven originated in 1946 when the stores were open from 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. Today, approximately 95% of all 7-Eleven stores in the United States and Canada are open 24 hours a day, with 17,104 convenience stores worldwide. Now, I got to ask you this. I got to ask you this question right here. 17,000 stores. They must be making money. Where's it cheaper to buy milk? Grocery store or 7-Eleven? Where's it cheaper to buy? Have you ever walked into a 7-Eleven? Hell, you have to pay $1 just to get in the door. Why is everybody there? Best service, not best product, best price, best service. It's all about service, especially in the richest country in the world. I know you think all your patients are poor, but that's because you've been brainwashed by healthcare providers, the news, the media. Group practice, everything. Here's my front office. Now, when we talk about group practice, we talk about service. We're going to go back. We're going to keep nailing operation logistics, because in football, when you pass the ball, 4 things can happen, and 3 of them are real bad, okay? And what happens if you don't take, Michael Jordan and Dennis Rodman and Scottie Pippen were genius basketball players. But you notice every time the coach blew the whistle or called a timeout and the players came to the side, that as great as Michael Jordan was, he would listen to the coach, and the coach would have a clipboard, and the clipboard would have a diagram of the basketball floor, and the coach would lay out a plan, because we're not talking about 5 independent players running and shooting the ball. We're talking about teamwork. We're talking about an offense, a defense, a strategy. And a winning basketball team, offense or defense, is about 5 independent people playing in an interdependent game of strategy to win the game. And what I see in dental offices is we have a clipboard with the with the office blueprint laying on the floor. And when you're having staff meetings, people aren't seeing the same score. How do you make high-quality decisions if we're not looking at the same score? You go to a football game. There's one scoreboard. The hometown team's looking at it. The visiting team's looking at it. The ref's looking at it. The fans from away are looking at it. The fans from home are looking at it. Everybody looks at the same scoreboard. When you have a staff meeting, I want to diagram the blueprint of the floor of your office. And then when you sit there and say, well, how did that lady leave without scheduling an appointment? Well, the back office, operation logistics, they brought her up front and they said, well, go up front and check out. And the lady just walked up front and you were on the phone and she just walked out the door. Well, who passed the ball up front? When you pass the ball, 3 things happen. 4 things can happen. 3 of them are bad. We see our deal here. We walk them up and we say, sit down. If I tell a patient to sit down, they'll sit down. If I tell them to stand up, they'll sit down. If I lean them back and tell them to open their mouth, they'll open their mouth. If I tell them to stick their tongue out, they'll stick their tongue out. You walk them up front and say, okay, why don't you sit right here? They sit right down. And then you point to the person, make eye contact with them, and say, that woman right there, Jerry Ann or Jody or Kathy Brodel, she'll be with you in just 2 seconds. As soon as she's off the phone, she's going to check you out. And they sit there and they put down their purse and they're ready to go. That's a flow diagram. That's how you start dotting I's and crossing T's. Now, in the distribution of dental practice in the United States, 20% practicing with one other dentist or group practice. 12% practicing with 2 or more other dentists. 68% are solo practices. That means 42% are group practice, or 32% are group practice, and 68% are solo. Does that even make sense? That's 70, 80, 90. No, I'm off there 10. It's 78% solo practice with 32% group. So 20% with one other dentist, 12% are with 2 or more dentists. It's mostly urban areas, and I predict that by 2015, 50% of urban dental offices will be a group, because there's no way solo will ever be able to compete with group. What is the advantage of group? Number 1, you have your fixed cost of rent, building, mortgage, equipment, build-out computers, insurance, and you have to pay that every month. And it doesn't matter if you're the 1 month of February with 28 days, or the 4 months with 30 days, or the 7 months with 31 days. You know why the calendar has those months screwed up like that? It's because the last time they adjusted the calendar was Caesar Augusta, and they had 8 months of the year. The calendar said we were in summer, it's the middle of winter, so they went up to Caesar with this plan. They thought they could get Caesar to implement this plan if they needed 4 more months. So what they thought they'd do is they named the 9th month after Caesar. That's called August, Caesar Augusta. And then September, November, October, and December were, September, October, November, December was how you count 9, 10, 11, 12 in Latin. And he brought the plan to it, and Caesar looked at August, and he says, well, my month is shorter. My month is going to be at least as big as the other month, so they stole 2 days from February. That's why February's only got 28 days, and then 4 months have 30 days. And what they should have done is they should have gone to 13 months, and then you'd have 13 months, all 28 days long, 4 weeks to a month, and then your fixed costs would have been very, very horizontal, but we're still dealing with a screwed up calendar. 1 month is 28 days, February. That's why the first quarter of Wall Street always has the least profit, because the average profit margin for the Fortune 500 is 5%. Well, hell, if you go from 31 days to 28 days and your profit margin is 5%, what did you do in February? You just paddled, you just treaded water. There's no profit in February for a commodity type business. So if you've already got your fixed cost, and you already paid for your fixed cost for 168 hours a week or 31 days in a month, as soon as you used up, done enough sales to pay your fixed cost expenses, you're now in the profit zone if you're above your variable cost of labor, lab, and centers. Remember, variable costs are costs that go up or down with the amount of activity your business does. So basically, group practice, it's everything. Look at here's the AMC Harkins Theater. Look at that. 4, 5, 6, 7. Just they go to the bank. They got 3 lanes of drive-through. Group practice, it allows you to have a higher management. It allows you to bring in a higher skilled office manager. So like this, the wall right by our checkout of all of our instructions and warranties. It allows you to have more scales of economy to bring in more sophisticated management. So you can have your warranties for 5 years. That provides patients with peace of mind, reduces confrontational tolerance. You know, when a woman's crown falls off and it's only been in there a year, it doesn't take much of a skeptic to think, I'm not happy with this work. But she still just goes somewhere else. Remember, if the phone doesn't ring, you'll know it's me. But when she has a warranty in her hand, it says, Margaret, we warranty everything we do 5 years, no questions asked, as long as you come in every 6 months to get your oil changed, your teeth cleaned, and let me take a look at it. So you can get more sophisticated management, because remember, 2 plus 2 equals 5. And that's the main benefit with group practice, is that you get more of your consumerism in line, you get more scales of economy for management, you can drive down your fixed costs and still be in the profit zone for more days. So basically, here's Barnes & Nobles. Look at Barnes & Nobles. They might have one person checking out books. And then they have a big wave walk in. They go right to the intercom. We need all checkers to the front, all checkers to the front. It's the same thing at your grocery store, same thing at McDonald's. You might go in there in the middle of the night. They got one person working the checkout register, but you sit there, a big wave of people come in, or a big bus stops up. Next thing you do, they've loaded 5 of these up. Group practice can absorb more waves coming in the office. When you got 2 dentists and 4 hygienists there at any given amount of time, from 7 to 7 Monday through Thursday, 7 to 4 Friday, and 9 to 3 on Saturday, our model is either a dentist takes 2 rooms, does their own cleanings in 1 room, and does dentistry in the other room, if they're slow, out of school, whatever. Or if they're very fast, then they check 2 hygiene to 2 rooms of dentistry. So it's 2 rooms where you do your own cleanings in room 1, your dentistry in room 2, and you just work those 2 rooms. Or we give you 4 rooms, check 2 hygiene, do 2 rooms of dentistry. But if a patient walks in off the street, which we average about 4 a day, or we get emergency, remember, emergency is defined by the consumer. We'll say, well, what's the problem, ma'am? Well, my tooth chipped. I just broke it on my fork eating my grape nuts. You're like, well, you're supposed to use a spoon with grape nuts. Well, I was using a fork and I chipped my tooth. Well, when do you want to be seen? Well, I want to come in today. Well, with 2 dentists, someone's more likely to have a hole with 2 than 1. And when you got 1 and you're backed up, you don't have the variability with 1 person. So what we need to do is sit there and go to groups so that we can cover our fixed costs more actively and provide more service. I believe that at 2,500 active patients, you and your patients could benefit with an associate. Dr. A could work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 10-hour days. Dr. B could come in Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 10-hour days. For each 10-hour day, the average dentist needs 375 patient records, okay? The clinical staff rotates with the dentist. An active patient is someone who has been in the practice at least once in the last year. And so when I say for each 10-hour day, you need 375 patients, you need 375 patients that came in your office the last 12 months. And this setup needs 4 treatment rooms, 2 for hygiene, 2 for the restorative dentist. You don't make money from owning sheetrock and dental equipment. Your fixed expenses will depreciate all the way to 0. You make money by fixing up patients' teeth beyond their expectations. You still got dentists out there that want solo practice because they believe like the old Texan. You know, in the 1900s, you give a Texan an acre of land out in the middle of nowhere. First thing the idiot does, builds a fence around it, gets a gun to protect it, and flies under the Lone Star State. It takes someone from the Northeast to say, hey, buddy, no one wants your acre out in the middle of Bumblebutt nowhere or Paso anyway. But it's part of that ape stuff where you got to have your own territory. Remember, your associate is an associate, not an assistant dentist. The associate dentist is not an assistant dentist. If your associate dentist is not treated as a professional equal, they are designed to fail. Just like if your staff does not see the accounting, does not see the check register, does not see the reports, does not know how much money it took in and how much was paid out and what the profit is, if they can't see the score, they're going to act like employees. I don't want any employees, and I certainly don't want an assistant dentist. I want associates. Now, 21% of dentists graduated in the last 10 years are non-owners. 8% of all dentists are non-owners. Average age of a non-owner dentist is 40 years old. Average net income of a non-owner dentist is $65,000 per year. The top 25% of associate dentists make over $85,000. The medium is $60,000. The bottom is 25%. 25% make under $40,000 according to the ADA survey. This is why group practice gets a bad thing, and this is why you have all these dentists coming in wanting 40%. Hell, they want 40%, 50%, 60% because they know it's a percent of nothing. Now, if the average dentist makes $122,000 a year, and the least paid associate I had last year made $146,000, the highest one made $167,000, hell, they doubled the average top 25%. And these numbers with associates are why so many people want to own their own sheetrock and have limited consumerism, because they're getting their chain jerked. The average general dentist earns $122,000 a year. Average specialist earns $192,000 a year. The average for all dentists is $135,000 a year. Top 25% of dentists earn over $175,000 a year. The median dentist earns around $120,000. The bottom 25% of dentists earn less than $75,000 a year, if you want to know where you're at. But I'm telling you, when you have an associate dentist, when you have one making $145,000, one making $162,000, one making $165,000, you have 401k, you pay their dues, their this, their that. All they do is they come in, they do their dentistry and leave. They don't have to worry about management. They don't have to worry about all this other stuff. My gosh, this is slick. In fact, if you're watching this tape and you're 55 years old and you're in Milwaukee or you're in Minneapolis, St. Paul, where my sister lives in a cloistered Carmelite monastery, and it's about, I think the average time I visit, last 3 times I visited, I swear, this is the truth. It was in winter. It was like one time it was like minus 21. One time it was like minus 12. Another time it was like, I've never even seen her in the plus zone. And if you're up there, you're 45, you're 50, you're 60, you want to retire to Phoenix, but you don't want to start an own practice, whatever. Associates, I mean, it's perfect. Get away from this. I got to own sheetrock. An investment is a house. A house is not an asset. It's a liability. All you want to do the only way you're going to make money in dentistry is fixing up people's teeth. And if you want to make more as an associate, just like more as any dentist, just work more hours. I said in an earlier tape that dentists who work over 40 hours a week average $140,000 a year. If they do 32 hours a week, they average 105. If it's 32 hours or less, it's 85. That comes right from the ADA survey of dental practice statistics, and I can name you 10 practice management consultants that all day long say the reverse is true. They don't have a dime's worth of data to back it up. So basically, on an associate dentist, the other thing is, if you're looking for an associate dentist right out of school, my God, that's sad. I mean, these are people that want to block off an afternoon to do a filling, okay? You know, everyone's going to ruin 5 or 10 root canals before they figure out what's going on. You know, your first 1,000 fillings takes about an hour of filling. I would always try to get, obviously, an associate dentist that's worked more hours. A fixed salary or fixed hourly rate is a disincentive to the employee and the employer. An incentive-based profit-sharing plan is an incentive for the employees and the employers. Everything in business is win-win or lose-lose. You can't have win-lose or lose-win. That only works in the short run. It never works in the long run, open economy, aggregate at large. It's not the percent, it's the practice. There are a heck of a lot of associates making a fortune at 25% and a heck of a lot barely scraping by at 40%. The higher the percent you make, if the ADA says the average general dentist overhead is 64%, and you're working for a dentist and you're getting paid 40%, and the average overhead is 64%, if you knew basic math, you'd say every time you did $1 to the dentist, you lost 4 cents on the deal. Well, when people are, and you say, well, I'm winning because I got my 40%, but he's losing. He lost 4 cents every dollar you did. Now there's no profit. So now if there's no profit, there's no investment capital. There's no intro cameras. There's no microabrasion. There's no CIRAC 2. There's no going to MTS Monge's leadership. There's no going to LVI Dickerson. There's no going to Carl Mish's Implant Institute. You can't go up to Gordon 2 days. You can't bring in consultants like Linda Miles, Kathy Jameson, Sally McKenzie, on and on and on. So, you know, think about it. Everything's win-win or lose-lose. Young dental graduates, by and large, are insecure, paranoid, scared, believe they know it all, have too many hormones, have no experience, have no money, have little to no dental skills. Other than that, they're great. Contrary to popular belief, most group practices don't break up. Everybody out there in the circuit saying, oh, group practice always fail. The number one reason that those do break up, do so, is over how the income is divided or spent. The same is also true with marriages. Sexual problems is actually number 2 in marriage. Number 1 breakup of group practice or marriage is over money. That's why when I got married, my dad told me, you know, the best advice you can do regarding money with your wife is when you get your paycheck, sign the back of it, hand it to her. And I've been doing that for 12 years. I give my wife $60,000 a month, and she gives me 320s. You figure that one out. Ask yourself these questions. Do you have the same energy, more energy, or less energy than you did 5 years ago? If you had to do it all over again, would you still become a dentist? What part of the profession of dentistry do you just like the most? Usually the top responses are managing the staff, managing the bills, dealing with accountants and lawyers and all that kind of stuff. So here's the deal. You're 45, you're 50. My gosh, if you haven't called AFCO by now, and I think Alan F. Thornburg, by the way, a lot of people broker practices. A broker is someone who sells your business and takes 10%. AFCO is not brokers. AFCO stands for Alan F. Thornburg. He's out of Atlanta. And contrary to popular belief, this guy sold his first practice before I was born in 61. I was born in 62. This guy has sold $1 billion worth of practices. Whether you're buying a practice out of school, whether you're selling one year older, or whether you're doing a practice merger, this guy absolutely wrote the original book on practice purchasing, mergers, acquisitions. Group practice means freedom. Group practice means that you don't have to wait until you're 65 to have freedom. You know, in group practice, you want to take off. You're 50 years old. Your last kid just went to college. You want to go sit for 6 weeks on a Mediterranean cruise. You can do it. You don't have to worry about dentures that don't fit, your root canals that blew up, your patients that are upset, that case that you were supposed to have back. It means freedom. You don't want to own sheetrock and mortar. That's like owning a chain and ball around your foot. You want to own your own business so that you can go from working 40 hours a week to 110 hours a week. So you can go from getting paid to paying out. So you can stress out to the fact that 70 to 80% will fail in 5 years. According to, these are owning your own business, not just dental offices. Why is it that starting around 50 years old, no matter how old a dentist is, they always say they are only going to practice 5 or more years? Find a 50-year-old dentist, well, I'm going to go 5 more years. 55, oh, about 5 more years. 60, oh, about 5 more years. 65, oh, about 5 more years. 70, about 5 more years. Greg Stanley, who has more financial data on personal income statements of dentists than anybody I know, I believe last time I talked to him, he's right here in Scottsdale. He's just absolutely, if you haven't seen Greg Stanley run, first course I took out of dental school, that guy, it's funny, he's got data on about 14,000 dentists. He says the number one determinant to telling you how much money you're going to have and at what age you're going to retire or if you're ever going to retire is the number of times the dentist has been divorced. If you've never been divorced, you'll probably maybe retire 50, 55. You've been divorced once, back it up 5 years. By the time you've been divorced 3 times, they find you dead at the dental chair, okay? You can't drill enough teeth in the world if you keep dividing your income and assets in half every year and paying taxes on it and lawyers. Behind every successful business, the single most important business decision you could ever make is to marry or develop a business interest in your spouse. Behind every successful business person is a business-oriented spouse. Behind Milton Friedman, there's Rose Friedman. Gordon Christian's Rella Christian. You will not find a single free enterprise stud. I don't care if it's, gosh darn, Thomas Watson of IBM, Ray Kroc of McDonald's. Every one of those people had one thing in common. Their relationship with their wife, their spouse, their hobby, their life was one core interest in this business. Group practice means diversity. Maybe your spouse owns their own business. Maybe your spouse doesn't want to ever hear about root canals. Group practice gives scales of economy. A group practice is like an index fund. It provides a diversification format for risk, stress, responsibility, and ultimately your net income. Do you really want to be the boss? Look, what's the benefit of being the boss? Responsibility for staff, rent, payroll, bills, equipment. If you feel the rewards for bossing around the staff exceeds the benefits of stress-free personal responsibility and freedom, then you are dysfunctional. I think that my associates probably look at me and say, I'd never want to be him. Howard does dentistry 110 hours a week. It's all he does. On his hobbies are getting an MBA, a master's in public health, lecturing around the world. If he's not lecturing, he's in the office. I do dentistry sun up to sundown 7 days a week. I have no hobbies. I don't want to golf. I don't want a dog. I don't want a cat. I don't want a goldfish. It's only dentistry. And the only way other people sit there and say, you know, I'm just not into it. I mean, I like dentistry, but I want to do it 32 hours a week or 40 hours a week, then I want to go golf. They're more well-rounded. They're more diversified. They have other interests. I don't. I'm very narrow-minded. Why must so many dentists own? Why do so many dentists insist on wanting to own their own dental office, which is nothing more than a large non-interest-bearing asset? What's even more bizarre is that these same dentists usually do not even take full advantage and maximize an interest-bearing tax-deferred 401k. It seems to be more emotional reasons for putting a fence around your acre of land in the middle of nowhere, Texas. Of course you have life insurance and a will. At 50 years old, if you have not made a solid relationship with a long-term, risk-averse, national brand name practice transition broker, like in my opinion, I think AFCO's, I mean, the guy wrote the book on it, literally, you are essentially making the same decision as not having life insurance or will. If you drop dead tomorrow, every day it takes to sell your office is a day of, I mean, the value is plummeting. Why would you carry $1 million life insurance, yet be 50 years old, and not have made a long-term relationship with a practice broker like AFCO to form, you know, what is an exit strategy, what are my options? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Regarding dentists, associate practice transactions. Whatever contract the associate dentist works under until the practice transition has to be the exact same contract the selling dentist works for under after the sell. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. So remember, when you're negotiating, if you're 50 years old and you're bringing an associate, and that's going to be your exit strategy sometime in the next 10 or 15 years, remember, whatever contract you negotiate for that person, the only way that could be win-win if that's the same contract you work under after the title transfers that dentist and you're working under them. Grow the pie. When you advertise for a dentist to come into your office for an office sharing agreement, you're essentially cutting up your own geographical area market by one more slice. This is not growing the pie. I have not seen a single argument why someone would want to do a space sharing relationship. Some dentist says, well, he comes in here and uses my office when I'm not here and he pays me $5,000 a month. Yeah, and 3 years later he's down the street and you are the one who brought in a dentist down the street for a lousy $3,000, $4,000 a month. That's very thinking scarcely. Success, defined succinctly, is fulfilling your needs by doing what you want when you want to. That's what success is. Success is being free to do what you want, not being tied down. I can say with great confidence that AFCO doesn't sell practices, but dentists all across America have simply bought over $1 billion of solutions from AFCO to solve their own personal practice needs. Residencies do wonder for a dentist. When looking for the ideal associate on the aggregate, a dentist who has completed a general practice residency is a severe cut above those who haven't. They seem overall to be willing to do far more procedures the average dentist usually refers out, such as root canals, surgeries, periodontal disease, implants, periosurgery. They've usually done a couple of ortho cases. If they don't have a residency, I think to be equivalent to a dentist that has had a residency, I'd say a dentist that's out of a residency 1 year after dental school is equivalent to a non-residency dentist 5 years after dental school. I mean, that's why even when getting their FAGD, a residency qualifies for half the requirement. The requirements for FAGD, Fellowship in Academy of General Dentistry, is 500 hours of continuing education, 5 years of practice, and complete an all-day exam. And that counts, a residency counts for 250 hours. Come retire in Arizona. You wouldn't be listening to me right now if the ownership of a dental practice weren't an outright burden. Never confuse ownership with profit. The smartest thing any dentist over 50 could do is sell their practice, put the money in their pension fund to grow with the miracle of compound interest, and then retire to Arizona and come play in my office with no management headaches for more profit. But that's just my opinion. Choose group practice. If you could make more money without the burden and stress from ownership, would you take that option? Critical balance thinking for hope, growth, and prosperity chooses group practice. When you are in a group practice, you can go on vacation, you can concentrate on where you are, not worry about where you aren't. At the unconscious level, psychological depression and burnout, as opposed to chemical clinical depression, is really all about the effects from having the true needs produced from your thoughts about making a life change without following through with the physical action of making a high-quality decision. If this practice, I mean, I have met more dentists that just came out of the Betty Ford Clinic or been on Vicodin for 5 years and finally crashed. I have several dentists, hell, even locally, that their staff found them in the bathroom with an IV. They're mainlining coke, methyl. Most of it's about 70% alcohol, 30% drugs. And when they finally break down and they're in charter hospital and they're in therapy and they finally get to the bottom of it, it just turns out, my gosh, I had a dentist, I'll never forget when he said, you know what, I realized I'd rather be taken out of the backyard and beat with a stick than go there and deal with my staff and the payroll and the bills and the upset patients. That's when you need to be 2 + 2 = 5. Group practice, I mean, it's so good. Economic incentives are a must. The number one flaw in all practice management material and lectures is the complete inattention to economic incentives for the entire staff's own self-interest. It's basically more about communism. They always sit there and say, oh, every morning you should have a group huddle, and everybody should huddle and love each other, and all for one, one for all. That is the biggest crock of crap. None of that stuff works. People deal with their own self-interest. If working harder doesn't affect my paycheck, I ain't working harder. You'd be an idiot to do so. High risk, owning your own practice is high risk. High stress, solo economic dependency. Group practice is risk diversification, economies of scale and scope, and creates a profit for each dentist that it collectively is greater than the sum of all of its parts. The number one professional competence of group practice is cross-consultation and professional camaraderie. I can't tell you how fun it is to sit there and just finally lose it. You know, you've been playing with the root canal for 15 minutes. You can't find the canal. You just get up and you just go to your buddy. I can't find that canal for nothing. Now, the first thing he thinks is, oh, man, I'd love to go in there and find it in 30 seconds. And you know what? You're getting tunnel vision because you've been looking at this thing for 20 minutes. It's something's the way you're looking at it. Every time one of the associates can't get out a root tip or can't find a canal or can't get this crown to go down, the other dentist finds it out in 2 seconds, and it's a high five, and it's thanks a lot. And plus, in relationships, you know, you just meet people that you just don't like, and there's nothing wrong with just saying, look, I don't like the guy. You know, Ronald Reagan was the most popular president we've ever had, and 40% of America hated him, okay? That's as good as it's ever going to get. 6 out of 10 people like you, and sometimes you got some person, they're on your nerves, you don't like him, maybe the first impression is bad, and you sit there and say to your staff, look, I'm not going to go in there, I don't like this guy, I'm not going to do a good job, I think he's an asshole, and you tell your partner, hey, remember that time I took your patient that was upset with you and I got her all settled down? Go take that one in room 3. Everybody wins. Patients win, staff win, you win. If you do not prefer to present large cases, then you simply market until you can reach 2 full-time hygienists for each full-time restorative dentist. When you go to all these big case presentations, you know why dentists are trying to present $10,000, $20,000 dental cases? Because they only got 10 new patients a month. If you market to where you got 2 full-time hygienists, check 2 hygienists going while you work 2 chairs, just doing the things you only want to do. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You want to do molar root canals, or send them out. You want to do crowns, send them out. You want to do implants, whatever. All you want to do is fillings and crowns. When you're checking 2 full-time hygienists for each full-time restorative dentist working 2 rooms, you keep all your specials in business. You only do what you want. Everything you do is a smile. But when you've got 1 dentist trying to check 1 hygienist every hour and fill up 2 or 3 rooms, now you're trying to sell dentistry. And you know what? If you were a salesman, you would never gone in dentistry or medicine or law. The people attracted to dentistry, medicine, and law did not want to work at Merrill Lynch, sell real estate, sell 100, 900 numbers, or whatever. The reason you were attracted to a sovereign profession is because you hate sell. So if you want to sit there and get rid of case presentations and trying to sell big $15,000, $20,000 cases, you know, every time I go to one of these veneer institutes where they're teaching how to do these 10 upper veneers, I like to pull all the audience to the side one at a time, and I keep track of them and say, how many veneer cases did you do last month? Half the class is 0. I'm like, well, why the hell you had a veneer case? Well, I don't know. I think I need to learn how to sell bigger cases. No. Just it's all operation logistics. 2 full-time hygienists for 2 full-time restorative chairs. If you only want to work 1 chair, then just do 1 hygiene. Because the overhead, it's the same math. Either 2 chairs, do your own cleanings and do your own dentistry, or 1 hygiene. It's all ergonomics. If it ain't in writing, it ain't. If an associate leaves your practice and violates the restricted covenant and opens up next door, the government is not going to shut them down. If you sue for economic damages, you probably won't be able to prove them because most likely there weren't any profitable damages in your office that you can prove. And secondly, you probably picked up the slack anyway when the person's gone, so the numbers didn't even miss because you just worked more hours and were harder. So always put the punishment into the agreed upon signed associate contract. For instance, if you violate the restricted covenant where you've agreed not to practice in a 5-mile radius of my office for 2 years, then you owe Dr. Good $30,000 cash for every year worked in my office, due no later than 30 days after the first day patients were seen in the new practice. Now, what judges do is they don't write contracts. They don't negotiate contracts. They just enforce them or kick them out. If two people agreed upon a contract, anything they agree upon is legal in America as long as what they agreed upon is not illegal. You couldn't say, well, if you violate the restricted covenant, I get to, you have to shoot my wife. You can't agree to something illegal, but there's nothing illegal in the contract. The judge will enforce the contract. Put the penalties in writing in contract law. Are you in an associateship or are you in an ambiguous ship? If you don't have a signed contract, no one knows what they're doing. AFCO will help you build one of these things. The higher the opportunity cost you pay the dentist in terms of the percentage of production pay, the less profit you make. Try to determine the real market value of a dentist in your area. In Phoenix, I think it's 25%. In small towns, it may be 40%. Just like when you say, when someone comes to you with a mathematical formula to value a dental office, I usually look at this guy and say, how could you get through 8 years of college and grow to be 40 years old and not realize that the only way you can value any asset is what someone's willing to pay for it? If you say your house is worth $20 million, but no one will give you more than $100,000, what is your house worth, $20 million or $100,000? Prices only determine what someone's willing to pay for it. So when these guys come to you with these arcane formulas, tell you what your practice is worth, let me tell you something. You take the same practice, you put it in an urban area, it'll sell for twice of what that exact same practice will sell for in a town of 2,000. So the average general practice nets 31% of collection, according to Bernie Fink, who's one of the masters in associates. Got to go hear Bernie. He spoke at the ADA in San Francisco. The guy's the funniest dental lecturer out there. You got to go hear Bernie. But arrogance plus ignorance equals governance. For liability purposes, you should never add an associate to an unincorporated practices. The 4 basic characteristics of a corporation is central management, transferability, perpetuity, limited liability. This is not the place, the format to discuss these things, but Bernie Fink is, AFCO is. But I want you to seriously consider group practice. And thanks again for another day, and we'll see you tomorrow.